I spoke to Mark Danner about the secret Red Cross report he obtained and what it reveals about the Bush administration's treatment of prisoners.
The United States tortured prisoners, and secondly, that this activity was illegal and constituted a breach of international and domestic law.
So Mark Danner, did President Bush lie?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
The G20 summit has begun in London following a day of protests from thousands of people. On Wednesday, dozens were arrested at demonstrations throughout London's financial district.
And I've never in my long life known a time when public opinion was so divided from government opinion, and I think that's happening not only in London but all over the world.
In economic news, the nation's unemployment rate has reached 8.5%, the highest it's been in 25 years. 663,000 jobs were lost last month. A total of 5.1 million jobs have been lost in the past 14 months.
We need money pouring into job creation, and we need to deal with the global crisis of the environment. So there's much to do above and beyond bailing out bankers and continuing to pour money into wars.
Evan Orlick-Jeter testified at the public hearings on gay marriage before the Vermont Joint Senate and House Judiciary Committees.
There aren't any examples of a family like mine. If my parents could just have the right to get married, this would make such a difference. It hurts me sometimes when I feel invisible, because few people understand my feelings about my family, and few people want to ask about families with two moms. As we turn now to my interview with author-journalist death row prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal. Last week, the Supreme Court denied his appeal to overturn his conviction for the 1981 killing of a white police officer following a controversial trial before a predominantly white jury.
The fight goes on. I am a believer firmly in without struggle there is no progress. Frederick Douglass used to say that, of course. It was true then, it's true now. You know, without struggle, there's nothing. There really is nothing. So we struggle on.
The Obama administration's released 4 Bush administration memos that gave CIA interrogators the legal basis for torture at Guantanamo and other foreign jails.
These are techniques that federal prosecutors previously charged as crimes. Moreover, in prosecutions that occurred at the end of World War II, American federal prosecutors sought the death penalty, sought capital punishment for people who did these things.
Those who carried out some of these operations within the 4 corners of legal opinions or guidance that had been provided from the White House. I do not think it's appropriate for them to be prosecuted.
A former Marine corporal who fought in Afghanistan testified last week on Capitol Hill and urged lawmakers to oppose President Obama's escalation of war in Afghanistan.
As a Marine, I was willing to give my life for my country and still am. But invading and occupying Afghanistan, sending more troops to solve what is a political problem is not the answer.
Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania has announced he's leaving the Republican Party to join the Democratic caucus on Capitol Hill.
As the Republican Party has moved farther and farther to the right, I have found myself increasingly at odds with the Republican philosophy and more in line with the philosophy of the Democratic Party.
The World Health Organization is warning the swine flu outbreak is at the imminent stages of becoming a global pandemic.
We have been preparing as if we are facing a true pandemic, even though we don't know the ultimate scope of what will occur.
Legendary folk singer, banjo player, storyteller, and political and environmental activist Pete Seeger turned 90 on Sunday.
Well, normally I'm against big things. I think the world's going to be saved by millions of small things. Too many things can go wrong when they get big.
At the top of the agenda for immigrant rights advocates is ending the spate of deportations that have separated more than 1 million families. We're going to turn now to one family torn apart by deportation who brought their case to Capitol Hill.
I am in Washington because I would like my mom back, and I would like to talk to President Obama because I want my mom back and I know that he can help us.
Dozens of civilians were killed Tuesday in a U.S. bombing in Afghanistan in what may be one of the highest civilian death tolls of the war.
I wish to express my personal regret and certainly the sympathy of our administration on the loss of civilian life in Afghanistan.
The U.S. military is denying it's allowed soldiers to try to convert Afghans to Christianity following a report on Al Jazeera that showed pictures of soldiers with Bibles translated into Pashto and Dari.
The Special Forces guys, they hunt men, basically. We do the same thing as Christians. We hunt people for Jesus.
With New York Times reporter David Barstow, he recently won the 2009 Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting for exposing how dozens of retired generals working as radio and television analysts had been co-opted by the Pentagon to make its case for the war in Iraq.
So they saw this group, and they saw in this group a way of taking the media filter, which politicians are always so fond of complaining about, and turning the media filter into more of a media megaphone.
The Iranian-American journalist Roxana Saberi was released from an Iranian jail Monday and has been reunited with her family.
For 30 years, we'll stand in recess until the police come forward. At this table. Healthcare is a human right. We want guaranteed health care.
5 people were arrested yesterday at a Senate Finance Committee hearing on health care reform and charged with disruption of Congress.
We really requested to Senator Baucus that he include a single-payer advocate at these roundtable discussions, and we were told very clearly that there would be no invitation coming. And so we felt that, and I felt that we couldn't be silent any longer. We needed to stand up on behalf of our patients, on behalf of our colleagues, and speak out.
Today's top story is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's quarter-century-long civil war is in its final throes, with the militant Tamil separatist group, the Tamil Tigers, or the LTTE, almost completely defeated. The United Nations says nearly 7,000 civilians were killed and over 16,000 wounded since January.
In Pakistan, the UN's warning the exodus of Swat Valley residents fleeing government-Taliban clashes could turn into the worst displacement crisis since the Rwandan genocide. Around 2 million people have fled their homes since fighting broke out 3 weeks ago.
Disposing of one argument as plainly as I can. We are not going to release anyone if it would endanger our national security.
The idea of detaining people not because they've committed a crime, but because of their general dangerousness or that they may commit a crime in the future. That's something that the documents that President Obama was standing in front of, particularly the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, simply doesn't permit.
After completing this exhaustive process, I have decided to nominate an inspiring woman who I believe will make a great justice, Judge Sonia Sotomayor of the great state of New York.
Although I grew up in very modest and challenging circumstances, I consider my life to be immeasurably rich. I was raised in a Bronx public housing project, but studied at 2 of the nation's finest universities.
In Kansas, police have arrested a 51-year-old anti-abortion activist in connection with the murder of Dr. George Tiller. Tiller was shot dead Sunday as he attended services at his Lutheran church in Wichita.
Every day he was thanked by women whose lives he saved. He was a humanitarian, a person who, I think his family said it so well, he was dedicated to women and to women's rights everywhere, and he did what he knew he should do as a skilled physician.
Of course, this is a great loss for women, but this means that we have a very highly organized, active, well-armed, and well-funded terrorist movement in the country that opposes the basic premises of American society.
President Obama delivered a highly anticipated speech in Cairo, Egypt today aimed at Muslims across the world.
And I'm also proud to carry with me the goodwill of the American people and a greeting of peace from Muslim communities in my country. Assalamu alaikum.
28-year-old Saeed Fahad Hashmi, known to his family and friends as Fahad, has been held in pretrial solitary confinement in a federal prison in Manhattan for over 2 years now.
Imagine for yourself, you're a pretrial detainee, not convicted of anything, and you're held in these conditions where you're not allowed to move, not allowed to talk.
The oil giant Royal Dutch Shell has agreed to pay a $15.5 million settlement to avoid a trial over its alleged involvement in human rights violations in the Niger Delta.
Well, I believe they settled because they didn't want the public exposure of their relationship with the military government and their involvement in human rights abuses in Ogoni and in Nigeria.